Hello and welcome back to another episode of No Flipping Excuses. My name is Michael Bretthauer, and today I am joined by a very good friend, Cody Lee. Cody, how are you doing today?
Amazing. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Absolutely. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us. The reason that we wanted to bring Cody on today's episode was Cody is somebody who is doing real estate and he is investing in properties that a lot of investors, especially new investors, find extremely challenging. And like us, like all of us investors, Cody has come across a lot of struggles, which he was able to overcome, close deals, and then on top of that, create a tool that helps him and new investors like yourself close deals. Now, before we get into this, before we get into the who, what, and how of what Cody does and what he's been doing to close multiple deals in a very tough market, let me first do a quick reminder. Make sure you hit that, smash that like button, give us a thumbs up, like the channel, and subscribe if you can. That really helps us out. We appreciate it, and it drives us to bring more guests on and deliver some amazing content to you folks. And I'm telling you, today is going to be no exception. Cody's going to drop some amazing bombs. So, Cody, why don't we start with you introducing yourself, telling the community about who you are, where you came from, especially some of those early on struggles that I know they can relate to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I was a kid in Oregon going to college and I ended up kind of catching the real estate bug. I was like, man, this seems so interesting. I watched HGTV and DIY Network, and I thought, oh, I could do that. And of course, once you get into it, it's a lot harder than what it
More
shows
to
on
it.
TV. But I started off and I was, writing letters for a real estate investment company in Central Oregon for free while I was going to school. And I picked up a lot of knowledge. I drove for dollars. I did endless cold calling campaigns, and I was just not getting a lot of traction. And, I was like, hey, am I doing something wrong here? There's got to be something that I am doing that I could improve on. And it kind of got in my head a little bit. I was shaky. I didn't really like sales too much. I would get in front of people, and I didn't really know what to say. And most of the conversations were low quality conversations where people, were like, "Oh yeah, I'll hear your offer," but then they weren't really serious, or they were angry that I was calling, and I was like losing my mind. I didn't know what to do. I was this young kid. I was like, well, maybe this just isn't for me. Um, and then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try something new. So what I did was I looked up, what is a good source for finding people who want to sell? And I was literally just Googling. I heard about Sharon Vornholt a long time ago, and she was talking about probate. And so I was like, hey, I wonder if I could do probate. So I went to my local courthouse. I had my little notebook and pen. I walked in, I got probate records, and recorded the decedent's name, the domicile address, the executor's name, and the executor's address. That's all I collected. And I wrote them all down, and then I sent out letters. Um, and long story short, I did that for a little while, and I actually ended up getting traction for the first time ever. I got good quality conversations. I actually had hot leads that were legitimate hot leads on my whiteboard at home. And I finally closed my first deal in Milwaukee, Oregon,
Nice.
after having nothing for pretty much 8 months. I had absolutely no traction. So I went from that to getting a ton of traction and getting a deal locked up, and then easy dispositions for within about 2 months after I started probate. And this is from a kid who, I'm not a salesperson. I don't know if I come across as confident on this call. Like, I don't
Well,
feel confident on this call. Maybe I
let,
come across that way, but I'm
yeah.
just not a sales guy at all.
And let's talk about two things about your intro in success, right? You were doing the typical writing letters, sending them out, having conversations with people who really didn't want to speak with you. So what you did is took it upon yourself to find a lead source that somebody has a real need, a real motivation to talk to somebody, and they might not be as upset to talk with you. And that's probate. Now, I know, comment below if you've dealt with probate before, let us know. I know the bells are ringing. Probate. Oh my God. When you talk about people that don't want to talk to you and are angry that you call, probate tends to be at the top of that list. But Cody, if you were listening carefully, actually turned that into an advantage because he saw the motivation of somebody that they do need assistance, they do need help. It's just about, it sounded like consistency was what I was hearing from you, Cody. A lot of consistency.
Yeah, yeah, and I think framing it in a certain in a certain perspective matters a lot too. So with probate, I said, okay, let me put myself in their shoes. I just lost a family member. Let's treat them like people. They're people going through a very hard situation. This is not just a sale. I'm not looking for just a deal. I want to provide value even if they don't work with me. And you can tell right now that I'm being sincere because it's from the bottom of my heart, that's how I feel, right? And people can tell that too. So when you reach out to a probate lead, you know, instead of saying, hey, I buy houses for cash. Are you interested in a cash offer? I would say, hey, I have been interested in this property for a while. I noticed that there's a probate filed, and you're executor of the estate. You know, I wasn't sure what your plans are for the property. If you're looking to, keep it in the family, I'd be happy to give you advice on that. If you're looking to list it, make sure it qualifies for conventional financing. Here's some great contractors that could probably do some work for you. Or if you want to just say, hey, I want to rid myself of this property and just sell it easily, we can talk about that and what we could do for an offer there. Or if you want me to just buzz off and, you've got it, let me know because I'm more than happy to, do that and, wish you the best. And I was prepared to do that, right? There was never a deal I wanted bad enough to where, I felt like for whatever reason I had to not be transparent, right? And people could read that, You're not
Right.
looking to get one up on somebody, right? You're not preying on them. You're offering them solutions. And if they want to work with you, great. If they don't, great, you know? Um,
Excellently
and that's how
put
I got
too.
my first deal. Yeah,
Excellently put. Yeah. So you took the assistance approach, which for those of you who've been watching our channel for some time, we always tell you take that assistance approach. Exactly as Cody was saying, put yourself in their shoes and figure out what it is you can actually do to help them. And then I love when you said, Cody, if you want me to go F off or disappear, I will totally do that. So those of you who have been watching us for some time know that out of our seller waltz, one of those key phrases that we prepare them for, we want them to give us the no. We want them to tell us the F off, get lost, because that takes us to the next level. You know what? Okay, you want me to F off? I'm putting it in my calendar, 4 p.m. today. I'm going to F off. I'm going to get lost. I'm going to go do whatever it is you told me to do. But my boss will kill me if I don't at least try to solve this, try to solve your problem or try to help you here, at least say what we have here. Is it okay? Whatever it is, you want to take that conversation. But some will, some won't. Who cares? You shouldn't be afraid of the person that tells you to F off. You shouldn't be afraid of the person that doesn't want to talk to you. Because Cody, talk a little bit about the process when you're following up with these folks. Is it always them picking up the phone and you being assistant and them being like, oh yeah, I'm ready to work with you? Or is there a follow-up that happens after that?
definitely not every conversation is the person ready to go. Definitely get a lot more no's than yeses. Even with a highly targeted list, I was still getting a lot of no's. So there's no magic list. Anybody who says there's a magic list just doesn't know. You're always gonna have you're always gonna have people tell you to F off. Real estate does require you to have somewhat of a thick skin. And if you don't have one now, just keep doing it and it'll grow. Trust me, you'll grow a thick skin eventually. But yeah, no, a lot of people were unhappy that I reached out to them even with that approach. And the best thing that I would do is like, I'm so sorry. I want to respect, your wishes. So I'll go ahead and put in my notes, not to reach out again through calling. And then if anything does change, please do keep my info handy. But certainly, the ball's in your court. And I've actually had people call me later and say, you know what, I'm sorry, I was having a bad day. I was being hounded by other companies and, you were different. You were actually polite and you respected my space. So, I do want to sell. And I actually did close some deals from initial conversations that were highly negative. And a lot of those were actually some of the best deals too, because they didn't want to work with anyone else, right? Because most other people either gave up or they responded negatively back instead of just being calm, collected, and saying, you know what, I will totally back off. Um, but the other thing is just follow up. So if I said, okay, I won't call you again, I would send a letter maybe 2 months later or a month later, and then just do an occasional letter or an occasional postcard or whatever. And maybe if 6 months passed and the property still hadn't sold, I might call them back and just say, hey, you know, I I noticed that probate's still open. I know that the property is still there. You mentioned wanting some space, so I just want to check in. It's been about 6 months. Are you still debating whether or not to sell the property, or if you need anything, just let me know. And it is consistency. It's a long-term follow-up for most deals. Every once in a while, you'll hit that unicorn where, maybe it'll move really quickly, but most of them are going to take a while. So being consistent and following up is crucial for an
Right.
effective probate marketing campaign, and really any marketing campaign.
Right. And even with that follow-up per deal, yes, you do need to be consistent with follow-up, and that does take time, but per deal, how many hours of actual like straight nonstop work do you think it took you? Because a phone call might take 10 or 15 minutes, maybe less, just to do that quick tap, 5 or 10 minutes to send a letter out. How much total time do you think it took you in follow-up with probate leads to close your first deal?
You know, it's actually not as much as people might think. Um, so for example, let me kind of paint it this way. So when I was doing absentee owners, for example, there was a list of maybe 10, 20,000 at any given time that I was just churning through, and it took an enormous amount of time. With probate, there might have only been maybe 25 to 50 new probates per month in my specific market that had real property. And that was the other thing too, is that not every probate will have real property. So I got to the point where I was doing it pretty good, where I was, I was checking county records and I was doing some cross referencing and a lot of research to find the ones with real property. So it boiled down to maybe 25 to 50 new ones a month in my market, which is not a lot. And so if you even take into account the consistent follow-up between all of those leads, it was significantly less than what I was putting in for absentees. And it was less expensive too. It was significantly less expensive because if you think about it, kind of briefly going through these properties and finding the ones that are in your buy box, or whatever kind of properties you're looking for, it's a lot easier to do with 100 properties, whereas it might not be that way with a list of 10, 20,000. And then also, if I want to mail them, okay, I spend maybe $50 for, a professional typed letter and a stamped envelope for my list each month. I mean, it was nothing. So I could afford to do a lot more mailings, a lot more detailed mailings, and then also creative approaches as well. So I would actually do this thing where I would take all my probate leads and I would Google every address and I would find, the street view, and I would look at the date. So if it was a couple years old, I think, okay, well, maybe it's either in worse condition now, or maybe they renovated it since then, so I don't know. But if it was recent, I'm saying, okay, this is probably pretty close to what the property looks like now. So I'd virtually drive for dollars. I would take note of the properties that I wanted to go to, and I would drive to the executor's mailing address if it was nearby, which a lot of times it was. And I would have a stack of pre-written letters in my car where I could just fill in the name and the address if I needed to. And I would just drop it off at the house if I couldn't reach them. And one thing that I love with your program that I did myself was, the call me about your neighbor approach. I did the same thing. While I was at the property, I was physically going to the neighbors. And if there's anybody outside, to be like, hi, I'm Cody, I'm local here. Do you know anything about this property? I've been trying to get in touch with the owner. And a lot of times they'll say, oh, the person passed away. I'd be happy to get you in touch with, so-and-so. And I'm like, that'd be great. And what I realized was some of my best conversations came from the neighbors kind of brokering the conversation with the person I was trying to get in contact with, right? And so that was the way that I could break through kind of that initial block for the conversation, because sometimes you do have the right number. Sometimes you do have the right mailing address and they're dodging. They don't want to talk to you.
Right.
So by kind of getting someone that they know to advocate for you can open doors that otherwise you would never have.
And we're talking about minimal expenses. The call me about your neighbor post-it note that we put on somebody else's door, the most minimal expense that you can make in marketing. You buy a pack of post-it notes, you can handwrite it on there with a marker, or you can go get a $30 stamp from Staples, the same place you pick up the post-it notes. So for 38, 40 bucks, you have the ability to market to, I don't know how many notes are in a pack, but there's quite a few, hundreds of properties, right? So very simple step, doesn't take a lot of time. And before we shift gears, because I do want to talk about the data, because that was very important. You talked about how in marketing with pre-foreclosure or something else, you have a much bigger list, right? That probably comes in much more often. So the expense, if you're not filtering through that list anyways, the expense to go through a large list is quite high. Now with probate, you mentioned that there is only a certain number, like maybe 50 that come through that have real property. You're talking about the data. Tell me a little bit more about probate and the difference between finding one with real property versus every probate lead out there. Because I think for our listeners, that's one of the big things when it comes to probate is how do I get the data and how do I make sure that it's even accurate? Because I don't want to talk to somebody who doesn't, is upset and there's not even a property and I got to talk to them about a property that doesn't exist.
Yeah, so there's no better way to get a negative conversation than reaching out to someone in probate that doesn't even own real property. Some of the most, violent conversations I've had where the person was just like, F you and all that. What were from probates that didn't own real property. So
Sure.
yeah, that's huge. We've seen kind of nationwide about 60 to 70% of probates will have real property included, which is lower than a lot of people think. There are some markets where it's higher, some where it's considerably lower. So it does depend on the market, but that kind of gives you an idea. If you're not sifting through these properties yourself and verifying ownership, or have a company that you outsource that to that does that step for you, then you're going to be reaching out to dozens, if not hundreds of people every year that don't even have any application to your business at all. And let's talk about soft costs, right? Like above just mailing them or wasting time on people that don't own real property, there's a mental tax as well. When you go into these conversations and you're hyping yourself up for a cold calling campaign or you're hyping yourself up for a mailing campaign, and then you finally get a response or you finally get the right person on the phone and they cut you out and there's not even real property attached. If you can avoid those situations, that's going to help you a lot with your psyche. I would literally go through a cold calling campaign. I would have to take breaks, right? Because I'm a human, right? So if I had too many negative conversations in a row, I would have to pull myself back and take a break. So I got to the point where, I had my processes so refined where I had, every probate owned real property. I was doing techniques that I knew rubbed most people the right way, where they were like, okay, yes, this is a person who respects me. Where most of my conversations were at least civil, and a lot of them were highly positive. And that increased my output, my output, my psyche. It made me enjoy my life more. When I did finally find an opportunity, I was more likely to get that opportunity locked up because I was in a good headspace. And so there's a lot of soft opportunity cost with, making sure that you have good, accurate data and that you're basically handling it responsibly.
Right.
And so both of those things are massive.
Yeah. And I would love to hear from our listeners on this. Comment below because that's huge. That's huge. It makes a big difference having the right data, right? If you get a list and you're all gung ho and I'm like, all right, I'm going to help all these people, but nobody on your list you can actually help. You talk to 500 of them, they're all mad at you. That's going to really weigh you down. That's going to make it very hard for you to get up the next day and do that again. Even if there's only 1 in 500 and you're looking for that one, that's really demoralizing to think I have to talk to 500 leads that I'm not sure about. I don't really know that, right? So um that's a big deal. So comment below if you've ever been in that situation, and Cody, tell us how you realized this, because one of the things you helped us with was probate data. We'd gone to the county, we'd kind of done those steps, and I'd seen that as well. I'd be going through the county records and I knew to look for the real property, but not a lot of people know how to do that, but it was also time consuming, right? How did you first learn about that? And then what was your process of getting around like, okay, I need to create a really solid filtered list so I'm not setting myself up for failure. So when I market to a list, every person that I speak with, some will, some won't. Who cares? That's not the point. The point is, I'm going to reach out to every one of these folks. I'm going to be a solution for them if I can. And I'm going to approach it with just an assistance attitude. If I get a deal, great. If I don't, great. But how do you make sure that you have a list so you can do that confidently?
Getting probate data that's accurate is just the first step, right? That's kind of the first step in what would actually fuel an effective probate marketing campaign. So let's say, okay, you're going to go directly to the courthouse. You're going to get the data directly from them. Great. That's where you should get it from the probate court. If you have a middleman, there's always a chance that, it's not going to be quite as legitimate. So, that's always like the number one way to get it as accurate as possible. The other way is, of course, to work with a company that's obsessed about the data, that can talk with you about data like I can
Like
on this,
Cody.
on this podcast, where I understand, I've been in the trenches. I'm not a data guy, right? I am a real estate investor who happens to do data, right? And that's all the difference in the world. I actually believe in probate data because I've seen success in my own life from probate data. So getting it directly from the courthouse is the first step. The second step is, how do I verify property ownership? There are a few ways you can do this. The first way is you can look at the actual probate documents if they're available in your area. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes you have to be part of the probate case, and then it gets trickier. But let's say you can look at the probate documents. Try to scan through the many pages of documents and the pages within the documents as you can, and try to find anything that indicates, okay, this person owned real property and this is the address, right? Because the domicile address, if you just go off of that, a lot of times is going to be inaccurate, because the domicile address a lot of times is going to be hospice. It might be a hospital. It could be a neighbor's house or a friend's house or a family's house. You'll actually regularly see domicile addresses that aren't even in the same state as where it was filed, right? So the domicile address is not the real property owned by the decedent a lot of the time. Sometimes it will be, a lot of times it won't be. So there should be some indication of this is the real property that's owned. If there's not, then you're not going to know for sure. If you can't get document access, which in a lot of areas you can't, then you can go to the tax assessor's office and you can search the name of the decedent and see if there are any results that pop up. There are a lot of challenges with this. It's easy in concept. It's very hard to do well. What I mean by this, let me paint a picture. Let's say there's a John Smith that passes away. If there's a John Smith that passes away, do you know how many John Smiths own real property in your market? If you're ever curious one day, look it up. There's probably going to be many dozens, if not hundreds of properties owned by a John Smith. If you're in the South, especially in Florida, 𝐲𝐨𝐲𝐲, there are going to be hundreds, if not thousands of properties with people named 𝐲𝐨𝐲𝐲. I'm not kidding. So if you have,
they should go do that right
with
now,
a common
Cody.
name like that,
They should go do
they
that right now.
should.
I'm
If
sorry.
they're
They
curious,
should
pause
go
it
online or go to your
go
county
look.
website right now, type in John Smith and see how much you come up. I've done this in Hamilton County where we are. And Cody's exactly right. You'll get a bunch of people and it's like, all right, where do I go from here?
You think, okay, well, maybe if I get the middle name or the suffix or whatever, I can narrow it down. Even the middle name, a lot of times you'll only get a middle initial. And I've actually seen regularly where you'll have a John William Smith Jr. or even John William Smith III on a probate case. And then you go and search that and you actually find someone with John W. Smith III on a probate or on the tax assessor's record. But when you actually look at the probate document, the real property owned is a completely different address. And if you go and search that address of the tax assessors, it literally just says John Smith. So even if you see a name that looks like it's very likely the same person, you
No
could be wrong,
guarantees. Yeah,
right?
no
Who's to say
guarantees.
that that exact name is right? And sometimes the actual correct address will actually have the name swapped, because both the tax assessors and the probate clerks both regularly make errors. So they might have the name swapped, they might have typos. So again, easy in concept. Oh, I searched the name of the tax assessor's office, get the property address. Easy in concept. Actually practicing through it, you might spend several minutes getting through just one probate case, if not more than that, and then multiply that by 50 or 100. You're spending hours doing this every single time you want to update your list. And there's a good chance you're still not going to get it very accurate. So yeah, basically, if you don't have document access, it's very challenging. And even with document access, it's going to be a very time-consuming task.
Yeah.
Um,
And to your
yeah.
point, one of the reasons that we get along so well is you need to find somebody who is obsessed, obsessed with the data, but not necessarily just a data guy. Like we said, or like Cody said, he's a real estate investor who, like you, was trying to invest in property, trying to get his business going, coming across the challenges that we all come across, right? The data wasn't lining up, the people weren't answering, the people were upset, all those common problems. So then Cody took it a step further, found a real estate lead source, somebody who does need assistance. And then another step further as far as getting the data, instead of just going out to buy it, which Cody, I think we can talk about this now. Purchasing data, right? When you go out and you buy data, a lot of times it's hit or miss, right? And it's not always that person's fault. I'm not going to name any data providers out there because it's not always their fault. It's just the nature of how data works. And Cody, I'll let you explain it more than I will, because you explained it to me and it helped me understand that when I'm buying a list from somebody, I got to be very careful and who I get it from, because I might be buying the most updated, out of date data.
Yeah. So It's always fun for me to do this, but I've run analyses on other companies' files before that provide probates, and there are a few common things that I run into. The first one, of course, is they're not scrubbing for real property ownership. So most probate providers are not doing that. So you're going to get a large portion of leads that have no application to what you're doing. So you are going to run into those negative conversations that we were just talking about. The second thing is the data a lot of time is actually pretty outdated. So if there might be some companies that do it on a monthly basis, and then a lot of the records by the time it hits your inbox is going to be at least a month old, right? And sometimes even more. There are other times where I've seen the filing dates that were provided by the company, and then if you actually look at the probate records themselves, the filing dates were actually months before what the company said. So essentially, it was months old data that was being marketed as recent data. So that's another thing to look out for is whenever you're going to get probate data, whether it's from, from Leadvine or somewhere else, check, do research, check on your own and say, is this actually accurate data? Am I actually getting what I'm paying for? Because there are some really easy ways to check. Literally, all you need to do is you take the data, you call the probate court, you say, hi, I wanted to just verify that this case had the correct information. The case number is this. Can you tell me the filing date? Or, can you tell me the executor's name? Or, can you tell me, when the decedent passed away? And you should be able to very easily and independently verify that the data you're getting is correct. If you can't, that's a big flag. If you don't have the case number, that's a huge warning flag. If the data is not very clear in what's what, that's also a big flag. Because you'll see some of these files and they're huge. They'll say, hey, we have 200 fields or whatever, right? We have 200 columns that you're going to have to go through, 200 different data points. You don't really need all that. Most of the time, you pretty much just need the case number, filing date, the decedent's name, property that's owned, the executor's name, and their mailing address. And everything else is kind of extra toppings on the cake. Property characteristics are useful. That is something we include. But if it's hard for you to understand and conceptualize and you're not really sure what to do with the data, and the person, the salesperson on the phone doesn't know how to walk you through it very well, then that's a warning sign that they're not obsessed, that they're not really caring too much how you're going to do with the data. They're more just trying to sell you on their product. And at that point, they're more of a marketing company rather than a data company. They're marketing themselves, trying to get you hooked on this idea of probate data. And oh, all probate data is the same, but we have the most comprehensive. All probate data is not the same. Definitely not the same. So yeah, independently verify, check to make sure that real property is included with every single lead, make sure you have the executor's information, and then make sure that it's easy to use too. Make sure it's mail merge ready, which is huge, because if it's not, if it's like in all caps, it's gonna derail potentially your mailing campaigns. If they don't already have updated phone numbers from the data, then you're gonna have to try to figure out how to get accurate phone numbers. When we put together a probate file, one of the things we do is we get updated contact information directly from the probate court. So a lot of the phone numbers are directly from what's legally provided, which generally is going to be the most up-to-date phone number for the person, and same thing with the mailing address. So it's just it matters so much. It's hard to overstate how important it is
Oh,
to get good
absolutely.
quality data.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I 100% agree that whenever you get a list, especially if it's from somebody that you're not having a relationship with, as far as, yeah, I trust you, we've been doing this for a while, I know the data's good, you should 100% go to the county and do exactly what Cody said. Call them, go online, pull up the record and see it for yourself, because the county is going to have the information that you need. It's just when it goes to the county, it can be a little hard to find it. But if you have the case number, you have everything that you need to look up the specific case, go to the county, look it up, verify that it is what it is, and then you're good to go. And if you see something that doesn't make sense, I was kind of hoping I had a red flag when Cody was saying red flag. I want to wave it up, be like, red flag. Don't put yourself in a position where you're talking to people who don't have real property, they don't have an issue, and there's no problem for you to solve. You're just going to talk to somebody that's upset and you're going to demoralize yourself. Don't do that. Check the data. That's why we brought Cody on here. So you knew exactly what to do with probate, because like I said from the very beginning, Cody was a real estate investor coming across the same problems, and this is how he overcame them. This is how he put himself with a list of folks that do need help and an approach that he could actually use with those people that need help to get them on the phone and start closing transactions. And just as you heard, it wasn't something that took a really long time to do. Now, there's a lot of follow-ups, so to speak, but what I'm saying is a few hours a day, contacting these folks, sending out a letter, doing quick touch-ups, and you're going to have pleasant conversations with most folks and close a couple of deals. Now, Cody, one thing I did with you before we jumped on this call was we did talk with Cody, and I asked him, hey, can you help explain the probate? Because you made it really easy for me to understand. You made it so we could actually do probate data a little bit better. So when we were talking with folks and we sent out a mailer, we were confident. We were confident that there was a property attached to this one. We were confident there was a problem that we could provide a solution for. And it just turned to, can we help them or not? Are they going to accept it or not? Like, that's the unknown. But at least we know going into it, it was good, solid data. So what I asked Cody is, not only can you explain to the best of your ability how we can help other folks do what you're doing so they can replicate in probate status that same concept, but is there something that you can do for them that you've done for us as far as maybe helping them jumpstart that data, maybe help them get a probate list? So Cody, maybe tell us a little bit more about what the shirt you're wearing, Leadvine, and how that might help folks who are listening right now replicate those results.
Yeah, absolutely. So Leadvine is my company. So we specialize in basically courthouse-based data and then also distressed data lists. And probate is our #1 data list in terms of effectiveness. So we do go into each individual county's probate courthouse. We get that data. We go through every single process I told you about in terms of the scrubbing and the cross-referencing and research and getting all of that information ready and usable. And then in terms of your students, in terms of making it more accessible, we actually are running a special for the rest of the month, only for podcast users, and it is actually limited time. It will not be available for very long, legitimately. So essentially, 2-day blueprint. People who sign up with a Leadvine probate list will get a second county's probate list for free for 1 month. So it's buy one, get one free for a month.
Did you guys hear that? Not only are you getting one list and then you get a second list free, but this is something that's filtered. Now, I had to twist his arm a little bit. Like you said, there is a time limit. It's not going to be forever. So if you're watching this, months down the road, chances are this option isn't available. But if you're watching right now, right after we post this up there, then you're going to be able to take advantage of the discount and you're going to be able to get that. Now, all you need to do is go to noflippingexcuses.com/Leadvine. And Cody, correct me if I'm wrong. When they reach out to you and they're asking about a probate list and they're curious about getting something, in order to take advantage of this special offer that's very limited, by the way, they have to tell you guys the promo code NFE probate. So they watch this episode. And that's the only way they're going to get it.
Yeah, that's right. If NFE probate is not mentioned, then we can't offer that deal because it's a pretty insane deal and it only makes sense for a limited time.
It
Like
really
you
is.
said.
And Cody,
yeah.
I want to thank you on behalf of our team, our community, our listeners for being able to make that offer, because I've talked with many folks who are trying to get started with real estate and they're looking for an avenue. What do I get started with? You picked one of the more difficult strategies that are out there when it comes to probate. Those conversations are very difficult. The time to get the data can be a little bit time consuming, filtering through everything. So you picked one of the more difficult ones, at least in my opinion, and flipped it. Made it something that worked not only consistently, but well for you. Like, it wasn't one of those, oh my God, I don't want to talk to this person. They're mad at me. I don't want to pick up the phone. It's like, oh my God, another phone call. Great. Who am I going to help today? So thank you for doing that. Everybody, comment below. Let Cody know what you think. If you have any questions as far as, okay, probate data, scraping, the case number, whatever it is, comment below. Let us know. We'll be responding in the comments. And Cody, anything that you would like to leave our listeners with? One specific question, if you don't mind, that I love to ask, that I know Jason has asked as well. What is one good book? Because you had to put yourself in the right mindset to get this going the right way. What is one good book that you might recommend for somebody who's like struggling and getting, because mindset was a big one here, to getting to that path? I'm just going to do it. I'm going to be consistent with it. I'm going to get the right list and I'm going to get a deal.
The Art of Flipping Deals. No, I mean, definitely that book.
That's a
So
good
one
book.
thing that actually helped me is Never Split the Difference. Actually did help me quite a bit. It was one of the first books where it was dumbed down enough for me because I'm not very sales savvy. It dumbed it down for me to where I could take that knowledge and actually implement it. And I know a lot of your students are, going to be able to take that and get even more value than I did out of it. But for me, it helped a lot. Never Split the Difference was definitely one that I highly recommend. Um, it's just kind of gets you in that headspace of, dealing with objections. An initial no isn't necessarily an actual no. And then also how to kind of use psychology to make someone feel respected, but also get the best deal you can. So there are a lot of good points that are talked over in that book, for
Yeah,
sure.
great. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Excellent
Yep.
book, along with The Art of Flipping Deals. Cody did mention that one, but I think either one of those books would definitely help you with mindset wise. Cody, thanks again for your time today. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about how to get probate data, the nuances of filtering through that probate data, and then helping our listeners, everybody here today, with that next campaign so they can go to their courthouse, they can double check their data that they've already purchased if you have, or if they are looking to get a new list, they can either go get the promo code if they're in that window because it is limited time, or at least reach out to you and say, hey, I want to talk about a list, and then verify all that stuff with the county themselves. So I appreciate that. Any parting words that you have for our listeners?
I guess out of everything, I really started getting traction when I stopped caring so much about getting deals and started caring more about providing value. If there's anything I can impart, it's that. Every conversation is value. I want you to be in a better position after talking to me than before. And that's okay if it means not working together in terms of me buying your house or even offering you a solution. I want you to, get education. I want you to have a good conversation with me. I want to provide you value. And people can tell that energy very quickly and they know very quickly if it's authentic or not.
Man, that is fantastic. I think that's a great note to end the show on. Thank you for watching today, and make sure you give us a like, comment below, subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode of the No Flipping Excuses Show. See you next time, folks.
Hey, while you're learning, stop for a second and get the book, The Art of Flipping Deals. Here's how easy it is. Just go to the website, theflippingbook.com, and what you're going to have is an instant download on how we flip deal after deal after deal with predictability that others can't find.